What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 256 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Sellozo. And today we're really excited about our guest. We've been wanting to get him on for a while now. Yoni Kozminski is joining us, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but most importantly, what do you do with your ecom business in a bear market, which is very relevant right now. So, Yoni, thanks so much for joining us. How are you, man?
Dustin, mate, thank you so much, and Chris for having me. I'm fantastic. I'm stoked to be here. Excited to talk about the topic. And I got to say as well, this is the first time I'm recording a podcast on a stand-up desk, and I feel like you just bring that much more energy to it. And Chris, I feel like you are too.
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. When you stand up, I don't know what it is, but when you stand up, you're like more engaged. You feel like you're in it more. Then you sit down. Something's different when you stand up.
Yeah, I know. I got to get one. We had one at our old office before the pandemic took all that away. And I've been sitting down. I'm jealous of your.
Get on your feet, man. Get on your feet.
I can't stand that. You would just see my waist. That's it. But yeah, the stand-up desk is like on my list of things to buy because it's you get more energy. Get to move around.
Don't feel bad, Dustin. I literally got one 2 days ago for the first time, and I'm now realizing the benefits, and it's real.
yeah, it is. I know. I got to realize those also. But man, we're really excited to have you on. There's lots that we can talk about. You're a very, very busy person. Clearly, you've got a lot of things going forward. But I want to start for anybody who's tuning in or listening right now and does not know you. Let's start with a little bit of your background and how you got into the whole e-commerce space and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to try and get through this so we can get into the meat of it. But I think obviously it helps to paint a bit of a picture of, why we can talk about the topics we do. So I spent a little over a decade in creative advertising and digital marketing. That's sort of what I did when I was cutting my teeth and growing up in the space. And the time that I'm talking about was when there wasn't social media for brands even. So I launched Mercedes-Benz, Australia, New Zealand's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. Unfortunately, I'm talking to a couple of Americans here, not because you guys are American, but because you wouldn't know what Mondelez Kraft Foods are, Cadbury Dairy Milk, Boost, Freddo Frog, Cherry Ripe, like huge confectionery brand, just not massive in the US. But anyway, that was sort of my upbringing. I grew up in Australia. I was there until about 2016, 17. And while there, that was everything from web design to development to UX, UI, content production, creative strategy, sort of the works here, SEO, PPC. I was the largest Facebook media buyer in Australia for a couple of years for Mercedes-Benz. And it was pretty cool having Mercedes-Benz and Facebook fight over who I got to go to the Grand Prix with first. So that was a pretty nice time. Anyway, I moved to Los Angeles and lived there for 3 years doing similar work in the creative advertising space. I was an agency there working with the likes of Sony, MasterCard, Medtronic, and always, I guess, like for context, guys and girls listening in, like I was always small agency with big clients. So I was the 10th employee in Australia. We grew to about 30, and I was the 15th in LA, and we grew to about 45. And so I always had the opportunity working with sort of really high or large enterprise clients where, for example, with Medtronic, if we were producing content, we had to produce it 2 months out, go through all the medical board approvals and get through that. So I sort of was familiar with what it was like to go through that corporate environment and walk through the cubicle farms, as I like to call them, which gave me the heebie-jeebies. But ultimately, I found my way to Israel about 6 years ago. Here, I met a couple of guys who had an Amazon business. They were doing about $2 million in revenue and had gotten stuck. And in 12 months, I was able to build a team out of the Philippines, and I would argue more high-level agency than I'd ever worked with, even with the clients that I'd worked with. And we took that business from 2 to 5 million. It was acquired by Thrasio. And on the back of that, just realized that there was a lot that could be done to help e-commerce sellers professionalize their business, for a lack of a better term. And so built MultiplyMii, which is high-end executive search and HR into the Philippines. So less sort of VAs that will be a jack of all trades and a master of none, but high-level talent that are delivering PPC or brand management or account management or UX research, roles that were very clearly defined. We have Escala that started 6 months later. That is a process improvement management consultancy where we build systems for e-commerce businesses doing anywhere from about $1 million to $120 million would be the largest business that we've touched. And the last business that we just launched in August is a joint venture with SellersFunding and Global Wired Advisors, where we set up a $50 million facility to invest in e-commerce businesses to accelerate them to exit. So take a breath, maybe a sip of water here, and that's me.
I want to go, and I know Dustin has questions, but I want to go to that the time that you went to Israel and you met the 6 Amazon sellers, and you said you scaled them from 2 to 5, but your previous adventures, it was all about marketing, but you built the system to go from 2 million to 5 million. Where did you learn about like VAs and how to do all that and like get systems in place? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so I worked with people around the world, probably over the last 10 years. I skipped over it. There's lots of less successful ventures. I would say for any entrepreneur who's sort of going through it, you didn't just wake up one day and, you have this great success. So I was running at different points in time. I was consulting for a period of time. And so I built freelance teams from creative resources to project management to development using Upwork, probably as early as sort of 2014, 15 kind of era, and sort of saw the different skill sets that existed. What really happened was, this was 2017. I really started working heavily with freelancers, particularly in the Philippines, and just really changed my perspective in what was possible. I hired this woman, Joan, who was really the first high-level person I ever worked with in the Philippines. And she was coming in to be a project manager. I looked at her resume and I was like, not in a million years, you're way overqualified for this. And she sort of explained. Anyway, long story short, we started working together and she was just on a different level. And it was in that moment that I realized it wasn't just VAs that existed on onlinejobs.ph, which I like to call the gateway drug to the Philippines. There's some seriously talented people with 120 million as their population, 95% that work with remote environments in the business process outsourcing space. BPO are college educated or higher. And obviously the cost of living is, depending on where you live, 50 to 80% less than what it is in the US. It's probably 98% less than where I live in Tel Aviv, the most expensive city in the world. It was just named. Yay me. But yeah, that was where I sort of stumbled upon it in any real serious capacity. And so like the whole MultiplyMii business model was really built inside of an Amazon, an e-commerce business. And that was really the catalyst. We sort of built it on the small scale. And, how did I learn, I guess, Chris, to approach scaling an Amazon business and go through this process? I mean, I'll tell you the truth of it. I came in with these guys and said, forget everything you're doing on Amazon. Let's build a D2C brand. That's what I know how to do. I know how to build brands. I know how to drive traffic. I'm buying media, Facebook, the works. This is what I'd done. I've personally been responsible for spending tens of millions of dollars on media, as in me actually doing the physical buying. It was about a week into working with these guys where I'm looking through sort of the PPC reports inside of Amazon. And, it's come a long way, particularly in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, and how many more ad units, DSP and everything that's been sort of rolled out inside of Amazon. But back then it was pretty rudimentary. And I sort of said to the guy, one of the original co-founders, like, something doesn't add up here. Like, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm seeing like conversion rates of like 20%. And he says to me, yeah, it's a little low, wait until we hit Q4. It goes up to like 60, 70%. And I said, forget everything I've told you about building D2C. I'm wrong. You guys are right. We're going to focus all our attention. And so effectively what I did was I built an agency for this business and took sort of 2-3 guys that were running around sort of trying to figure it all out into really professionalizing that operation. And, what we do in Escala far exceeds anything that I could ever produce myself. We've got 35 full-time management consultants who are way more intelligent than I am, but that was sort of the catalyst.
Gotcha.
Now
to get, sorry, I got.
No, you go, Chris. Go for it.
Because I got a 2-part question here. So, getting to 2 million is a goal in itself, right? Is an achievement in itself. But getting to 5 million is another really, really good goal to get to. But a lot of sellers can't even get to that 2 million. What's the missing piece there? I mean, what are sellers doing wrong to get not to be able to get to that 2 million? Like, what do they need to do in order to get to 7+ figures in their business?
How long we got, Chris?
I know, man. I know that's a loaded question. Question.
No, it's not. It's very fair. And let me caveat everything that I'm going to share with you right now and saying I have been a victim of this myself. So I'm not coming here being holier than thou saying like, why are you guys doing, like, I was doing all of this stuff myself, and it's only through my learning, education, working with, mentors, working with really capable people. And honestly, I'd say like understanding that none of us, not one of us on this call or anyone listening to this podcast has all the answers. And I think once you can remove humility, or you can be, you can have humility and can actually, and be humble and realize that, where everyone is just trying to figure it out, and you're open to feedback and improvements. That's when you start to see the real growth. So coming back to it, what is it to get to 7 figures? I think like one of the principles or a few of the things that we talk a lot about inside of Escala from being a process improvement management consultancy is how many SKUs do you guys have live right now, plus minus?
25-ish.
25, right?
Yeah, 40.
So 25 and 40, right? Do you guys have a hero product or 2 or 3 that are really performing far better than that other 22?
Or yes.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you guys give the same level of love and attention and resource to all 40 and 25 of your products respectively?
No.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's start there from that component. So being able, you know what to do, right? You understand how to build a winning formula. You've clearly had success in the products. And obviously, not every single SKU that you launch is going to be 100% winner. And the keyword research and the rankings and the ability to, like, it's not going to be 100% equal, or far from it for that matter. But if you were able to build out a system that brought in your people, process, and technology to building perfect harmony with every single product that you launch, gets the same level of attention, time, and resource, then you either say 6 months on, 3 months on, 12 months on, I've done everything I can. It's not a winner. I'm going to liquidate or wind it down or let it run. So I'd say a couple of things here. One, let's take the ego out of the room. I think a lot of sellers think that they need to be the decision maker in every single decision that needs to be made. The first thing that I would say, or one of the things that we preach, and particularly my co-founder Lippy is always saying, if you can build a process whereby someone else can get to 80% of where you'd like to get it, delegate it. You shouldn't be doing that task anymore. So the first thing is being able to delegate. And effective delegation, or how we look at effective delegation, is really an ability to delegate accountability and responsibility, not tasks. So a lot of people are working with VAs. I'm just going to rant here, and you guys jump in at any point.
This is good.
So a lot of people take the approach when they're going to work with VAs and things and people of that nature and say, right, like, I've got this laundry list of items. I need you to do it. You build the list, you build the process, you build, a version of your SOPs and the training videos and the Loom videos, and off you go. And what ends up happening to all of us when we build it that way, an hour, maybe not an hour, let's say a week goes by, 2 weeks go by. I finished all my tasks, boss. What's next? Or worse, I'm not telling you, I got the clock running and I'm going to charge you for those hours that I'm not really, kicking my feet up. Now, if you attach that to a defined outcome, so let's say product researcher, your goal is to find me 5 products a month that look interesting, which I'm going to whittle down to 3 products a quarter that I'm going to plan to launch, right? If the if the delivery mechanic was tied to that accountability and responsibility of finding me those 5 products and defining the parameters of what those products may or may not look like, that's how you're going to remove yourself from that bottleneck around the decision-making component. And that's true for every aspect of your business. So how we also look at it, you know, a lot of people look at their org chart. What we really like to layer on, and one of the things we really preach is building the accountability chart. So another fundamental mistake I would say people, and again, I'm talking for businesses that already have, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 10 team members, right? You know, if it's just you at home by yourself, working on your business and growing that, let me take a step back as well. You don't need to hire 3, 4, 5, 10 people. That's not what I'm suggesting here. But as soon as you have products live, as soon as you're getting to a point where, you know, the business is growing and maybe it can sustain a level of, you know, paying, and I'm talking, you know, $5 an hour, $10 an hour, and having someone in for 10 hours a week, 40 hours a week, whatever that looks like. As soon as the business can afford to pay that, I'm always looking to buy more time, because it's the only commodity that I really care about personally that I'm not getting any more of. So, you know, right now, full disclosure, like our business, we have nearly 400 people on payroll. We have all these other things going on. We're at about break even, you know, like there's no reason. We're about 3 years in. There's no reason why I need to be making wild profits right now, because I'm trying to buy as much time as I can to put myself in, you know, what I would define, and I didn't coin this term, but, you know, my unique ability, I think, is EO or, you know, one of those sort of communities language, or like in my zone of genius or something to that effect. So I'm always looking to buy more time through delegating, through that accountability and responsibility, and bringing in people now who are far smarter than I am, who are way better in areas that, you know, I just should never be touching. And that's like finance. Like, don't let me touch your finances. Yeah, I will ruin your business.
Yeah, don't let me,
there's
I don't
3
even
of us on
look
this
at
call. There's 3 of us here for that one. Yeah.
So that's a couple for you. I mean, I can keep rattling them off, but let's maybe.
Well, I like how you broke it down. Like, you know, Dustin and I both have like a handful of products that are our hero products, but the remaining, you know, 80% of them, we don't really put that much effort into them, just because the other 20% or whatever are doing all the sales. So when you break it down, it's more like project based, where you're looking at, like, your job is to optimize these 10 SKUs, get them to a certain number of sales per month, rather than just be my listing optimization. Like, you set defined goals when trying to get, or when trying to hire a VA. You have to have a goal in place before you just start hiring VAs.
Absolutely. So you should always be hiring for your business needs, and not just because you find a really great talent, you try and, you know, reverse engineer and plug them into the business.
That's what I've done. That's what sucks is I see somebody who has really good reviews and they're like a rock star, and I get them in here and it's like, there's not enough work for them to do, or they don't need that. They're way too qualified. This is not enough. They don't fit well because I don't have the right process in place for them, or I don't have the right goal in place for them yet. It's kind of frustrating.
So I'll tell you how you can find your way around that, or how you can sort of take a step back and look to bring in the right freelancer or the right full-time team member, whatever that looks like. How we like to approach it is what we first do when we're looking to achieve. So actually, let me take a step back. We'll talk about how you solve for that problem. Before we go into that, I just wanted to sort of take you through. And again, my background was working in agency land. And that is selling on Amazon is, you know, building an agency. They're one in the same in terms of, like, you need someone, you know, at the start, it's probably you who's a jack of all trades that's doing everything from keyword research to PPC to listing creation and optimization to maybe even jumping on Canva to do the design work, all the way through to the demand and inventory planning, dealing with, you know, compliance, all of it, right? Now, when you look at sort of the agency model, and I think one of the most valuable things I learned, and again, I learned a lot in my experience of what not to do and how not how things didn't really gel the way they could have. And that was through sort of poor systems. So one of the most integral roles inside of any agency that's going to run well is going to have, they're either going to be called a traffic manager or, a senior project manager, the person who is responsible for all of the internal resource and demand planning. So we used to run it where every Monday morning we'd have a stand-up meeting. Everyone the week before had to come in and estimate how much time allocation they would need from different resources to the best of their ability, understanding, being in the game for a while and understanding what things typically taking it to the traffic manager, and then them sort of working together and understanding like delivery time needs to be by this date. So I have this videographer and this photographer and this creative designer and this art director and this creative director and all these resources. So working backwards. So I'd say when we look at how do we actually build out our business to not just hit our top 3 SKUs, but hit all 25 or all 40 of them, then what I'm doing is, and you guys will know straight away, plus minus, what does it take you to, bring 5 high value images to market for your main image, and then all the supporting images. You have an understanding around a keyword research. How many hours is that? So you sort of build the books of what it's going to take, and then you start to fill and plug in those different individuals, and all of a sudden, it starts to be very clearly defined. Like, okay, I'm not going to get through all 40 of my products in 1 week, but over the course of a 2-month period, I'll be able to absolutely juice all of them, giving them all the love and attention, having someone like a project manager actually running this for you. So I'd say, and what I say to a lot of people when we sort of get into this level of detail is, I think the most valuable, most underrated role in any business, project manager, especially for entrepreneurs who are so shiny object syndrome, next thing, next business, and I'm the most guilty person here. I'm running 3 businesses at one time here. I've also got technology in the background that we're not even talking about yet. But the point I'm making is we're all guilty of it. But if we can build out that planning, then you're able to achieve significantly more when you sort of step your way through all the resources and all the planning sort of 3 months out, 6 months out. And, obviously the further out it gets, the less clear you are on how that actually looks and operates. But I mean, it's an absolute game changer to get that level of clarity.
One thing I see when hiring VAs is you'll get somebody that's like, I'm a listing optimization expert, and I do PPC, and I do inventory, and I can do cases for it. Like, they do all of it. And I'm almost to the point, I just want like a PPC guy, and I just want an inventory guy, and I just want whatever it is. Is that the same type of structure you're seeing? Like when you're hiring VAs and when you're building the team, get the person that don't go after everybody who knows everything in all the business. Get someone who's an expert in each individual section.
Yeah. So yes, with the caveat that, let's take the typical journey. And I would even say, if I had my time again with MultiplyMii and Escala, in terms of how we've built out like our marketing function, we've got 15 odd people inside of our marketing function. And, that's a pretty heavy cost when it comes to recurring headcount costs. Even though our team's mostly based out of the Philippines, we're still talking $30,000, $40,000 a month that we're injecting. And what I would say to anyone who's going through that process is, it actually pays you to spend a little bit more to leverage an agency, whether it's a PPC agency or a full brand management agency or a creative studio, whatever that looks like. Learn much cheaper, more expensive as a pure cost basis on the upfront, but the lessons you'll learn in how they run it, particularly when you think about ad management. I mean, they're literally jumping into your ad platform. You're going to see how they're structuring campaigns. You're going to understand what they're buying for. Maybe you don't understand all the keyword research, but you know what? You're smart enough to start your business and get to this point. You're going to figure it out, and you're going to figure out also potentially ways that make more sense because you live and breathe your brand. So I'd say from a starting point, leverage experts. And I'm saying this as well, 100% candidly. And I give this feedback to a lot of people who get on it, who want to chat to me about hiring someone through MultiplyMii. And we only place full-time dedicated talent into other businesses. That's the model that we built for MultiplyMii. And so I'll say, listen, like, as much as I'd love to work with you, if this doesn't work out, like if we don't find someone that actually sticks and adds value to your business, then we actually end up losing money because of how we've built our model. So I will personally connect you with agencies and say, this is a good fit for where you're at. Come back to me when you feel really confident that you're ready to bring it in-house and you get to that level. So I just say, like, incrementally sort of take those steps. You don't need to take a plunge. And if you've never managed someone before and you don't understand how to build, performance management and reviews and how to actually build an onboarding plan and all these things, then it can become very overwhelming. And, Chris, kind of to your point, you're like, I hired this person, never ends up working out just the way I wanted it. I mean, there's just like a few of these elements that I can actually step into now, into how you actually find what do you actually need. So I'm just going to segue myself into that. So
I enjoy like finding VAs, and I enjoy getting a team together. Like my bookkeeper I've had for years now. Like, and I enjoy that relationship. I've got an inventory guy, and once you find somebody, you're like, okay, this is perfect. Like they know what I want. I don't have to give. I'm really bad at giving like direction. I'm like, hey, I need 5 images for this SKU. You figure it out, right? Like, what you've done in the past. Don't send me like revisions. Just you figure it out and let me know when you're ready. Like, so I'm really bad about that part. But once you get somebody, it's nice to keep them in house, and you want to keep them for as long as you can, because they kind of know how you work now, and that's the tough part.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we can talk about how you build incentive programs and things that help retain based on performance, and I think that's a really smart move. But coming back to it, I mean, you said you got a great relationship with your bookkeeper, and that's something that works, right?
Right.
You had a very specific need for your business, and that was, can I swear here? I don't want to deal. Yeah. I don't want to fucking deal with my books. It's the worst. It's the absolute worst thing. I'd rather neck myself. But ultimately, there was an objective. There was a mission that you were trying to solve for that had a defined outcome, and they need to have specific attributes to perform that. And off you go. You found your goal. Whereas if you are sitting there and you're sort of like spraying and praying, hoping that you find this, absolute unicorn, which I've looked, they don't exist. They're not around. But if someone finds one, I'm all ears or eyes. but ultimately, we leverage a lot of the AIM method for hiring. That's the methodology that we built in to our MultiplyMii framework. So we've got a few different models, but one of them is called our Talent Accelerator program. And inside of that, we build onboarding, first 90 days, how to approach it, the performance reviews, the cadences, the KPIs, to help like equip people with how to be better managers. And I think that's most of the battle, is how to be a better manager. And, again, I say all of this as someone who is guilty of making all the same mistakes. So, I'm just like everyone else. And I think like all of us entrepreneurs, we're trying to solve for problems and gaps we see in the market. So in the AIM method for hiring, which is really cool. I had Dr. Jeff Smart, who wrote that book, on my podcast recently, and it was amazing to sort of hear.
What was that book called? What was that book
called? It's an old book. It's called Who, the AIM Method for Hiring. They interviewed, I think, well over 1,000 high performing professionals that were in managerial roles, and they built this methodology on the back of it. But inside of this methodology, when they're looking to, before you go to job description, what's the typical thing? You jump online, digital marketing manager, Indeed comes up, you download the job description, you edit like 3 years experience to 10 years experience, which doesn't exist as well, and all that stuff. You do all these dumb things, and you don't really know what you're getting, because you're just putting out like what the job description is. If you take a step back and you start with, what is the mission? So in 3, no more than 3 lines, 2 to 3 lines, what does success look like if this person is involved? And let's say, for example, we're talking about creative. Let's talk about, let's say you have 1,000 SKUs, or you don't even need that many. Let's say you have 50 SKUs, and you're thinking of bringing on a designer. Their mission is to create beautiful images that will help sell the product and, put the brand on, in the level of the top 1% of brands on Amazon, something like that, something really short and succinct. Now, in order to achieve that mission, you need to define the outcomes. So, being able to use Photoshop and Illustrator at a whatever level, being able to understand brand language and, how EBC flows, things like that. Again, I'm really just shooting from the hip here. And so once you sort of set 3 to 8 outcomes that would help you achieve that mission, then the final stage in this is you build the attributes. So what characteristics does this person need to have in order to be able to perform these outcomes that will ultimately result in you achieving your mission? And only then do you move in to the job description. But that actual framework, so that mission, outcome, attributes, draw a line on the side of it, put down comments, and do another line and put down rating. And so when you're going through it, every candidate that you're interviewing, you're asking them the same questions to understanding where they fit. You're giving them a score from 1 through 10 or A through F, whatever you want to, whatever scoring system you want. And then at the back of it, you have comments. And so if most cases you'll have someone that scores the highest and it becomes a no-brainer decision. It's not like I rocked up yesterday, had an interview, and I've done like 10 back-to-back meetings. And at the back of today, I had another interview, but I can't really remember the candidate from the week prior, And again, I used to walk into an interview, pick up the resume or the portfolio. I would be lying if I said it was more than 5 minutes prior to the interview because I was on another call. And, depending on the mood I was in, depending on how I vibed with the person would dictate if I hired them. And, I've realized over the years that's not good for the business. So coming back to the start, defining that mission, outcome, and attributes that are going to be successful for your business, and not just because you vibed with a person and they felt like a fit. That's a massive bonus and benefit. If culture is a whole different topic of conversation, but it fundamentally shifts the way in which you build out your needs and your resources to actually help you scale your business.
I really like that. Everything you just said brought me back to the very first VA that I hired a long time ago. Just like you mentioned, I was just looking for a good quality person. There wasn't anything specific. I had tasks that I needed to get done, but I found it, and she was phenomenal, great at what she did. But as it rolled out, I had her doing a lot of the things that were lower down on the things that she really liked to do, and it burned her out. And she ended up leaving after years, and she was unbelievable at everything she did, but it didn't align, just like you're talking about, to her goals, and my goals were not aligned, and that could have been resolved by following a hiring process like you mentioned. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I've lost, over the years, I've lost some great talent because I wasn't, they were the right person in the wrong seat, or worse, they had untapped potential and I wasn't actually giving them what they needed to continue to grow. And so, these are the battle wounds that you suffer in that education process, but, you hopefully take from that and sort of build to how do I go again? And, that's, again, it's the perpetual cycle of just trying to better ourselves and learn.
Absolutely. Building successful teams is key to obviously having a successful business. Can we transition and talk about bear markets now? And because I think there's correlation, obviously, to your teams and your structures and your processes to how you handle a downturn in the economy, which we're clearly going through. This one's kind of weird. I'm not an economist, but the markets are down, inflation's up, but I go to a restaurant and it's packed. So I'm kind of confused about what kind of economy are we really in right now? But there's going to be a lot of, I think, potentially negative pressures coming to businesses. We've experienced supply chain. Hopefully that's done. We'll find out. But all these different things. I think inflation is a big one. I think price the pressure on prices and how we price our products and all of that are going to be interesting. But in general, if we're running a business, then you watch the news, it's filled with fear. It's all negativity. All these bad things are happening. How do we navigate that through? I mean, and you've been in the space a long time. You've seen great economies and bad economies. How do we navigate this right now?
So I would say I just want to take a step into sort of the Amazon ecosystem for a second, like very specifically around what we've seen over the last 4 years, let's call it. So we're all familiar with Thrasio. They were literally the business that invented the roll-up play specifically for Amazon brands, where they go out and they buy a bunch of Amazon brands and they look to operate them at scale. And that's really the model. So we saw them raise $1 billion. On the back of that, they've gone on to raise a further 2.4 in, let's call it 3 to 4 years. In that journey, they acquired 250 plus businesses. They were the fastest profitable unicorn in history of the world. No other company has done it faster. On the back of all of those acquisitions, it turned out that they were actually, and these are profitable companies, obviously, that they're buying, they were burning cash. And so they laid off, I think, about 20% of the workforce. And what we've seen on the back of that is, a number of these aggregators have actually gone bust. They've been absorbed by other aggregators. The whole Thras M&A team was disbanded. It was nearly 90 people. And, that they're not an isolated incident. A lot of businesses on the back of that had the same thing. No one's buying businesses. If you're looking to sell your business right now, the multiples went last year from sort of I think it was from a 5 to an 8 was sort of the industry benchmark, to now you're looking at anywhere from about a 2 to a 3.5 on a good environment. And I'm talking about businesses that are doing sort of, let's say, I mean, it's also shifted as well. Like, let's say a year ago, you might have $1 million EBITDA business, let's call it a $3-4 million revenue business that might do a 5 or 6. And if that goes to sort of 1.5 or 2, then maybe it's starting to get up to that 6, 7, 8. And, when you start to get enterprise value, it shifts. So we've had a real restructure inside of the Amazon ecosystem where the roll-up plays, where about $15 billion have been invested over the last 4 years, where people are now trying to actually understand, rather than acquisition through top-line growth, how do they actually build these for true scale? So, they're going to have to, they've gutted their teams, a lot of them, and they're looking to find reduced operating costs. So obviously, some of the things that people are doing are coming and finding talent that costs far less than, a 6-figure salary in the US is a pretty easy no-brainer, right? Mm-hmm. What I would say when we look at the current state is, this isn't all doom and gloom and despair. So don't take that from what I'm saying right now. I also Thrasio, fucking unbelievable what they've been able to do. Take nothing away from, what I will say is probably a blip on the radar for them, or, maybe a little longer than a blip, but they'll get to where they need to get to. And, they've put the right people at play, and it's a great idea. And it makes sense. They also went through a really tough time with the compression, both on the Amazon side and on the supply chain, logistics, and everything between, all the tariffs that have come out and so on and so forth. So, full disclosure, like I was saying to you guys before, we launched this business, South Col, knowing that, we sort of read all the signs, and, we're staffing. We've built probably 10 to 15% now of the aggregators operationally through Escala, and we staff just as many of them through MultiplyMii. They're, our biggest client base. And, we've grown from a team of 4 to 350 in 3 years. And that's pretty quick growth, and it's hard. And even with the process improvement consultancy, we continue to break the things that we build. So, seeing that and understanding that it just doesn't make logical sense to be able to hire 100 people a week, consecutive weeks, and think that it's all going to work out is, you really have to be at a different level to achieve that. So now getting to sort of where we sit today in, October of 2022, it will shift. Our belief is over the next 12, 18, 24 months, we're going to start to see that influx. Things will settle. People have that confidence. Because it's not like the capital's gone. The money's still there. It's just much harder to get your hands on right now. People are just waiting to see what's going on. It's kind of like what we experienced in the start of the pandemic years ago. It was like everyone just sort of, worst time ever to start a new business. But you sort of waited, and then people look to fix it. So when you're looking to go through, setting the stage here, but when you're looking to go through what is right now a bear market, and with your goal, assuming that it is to ultimately, we can obviously make good money with a lifestyle business. It's very hard from a cash flow perspective to make any real life-changing money when you talk about building an e-commerce business or an Amazon business. As you grow, so too does your need for additional capital, and that comes with all different forms of capital lending. So, I would assume most people, especially knowing what Thricer have been able to create in a market that acquires Amazon FBA businesses, creating it into its own asset class effectively, that the ultimate goal is exit. So what we're looking to do in South Col, and what I would say everyone should be looking to do, is you're doing two things. So you're looking at how do I grow my multiple? So what are the things that I can do now to really increase that multiple, so that when I am ready to sell and have that life-changing money come in, I'm really in the best place. Anyone who says you go to an investment bank or a broker, it's not a 30 or 90 day trend. You can't have any real change in the actual upside of your business in a 90-day period. And anyone who tells you otherwise is, they can build you to ready and make, and cross the T's and dot the I's and, wrap it up in a bow, but you're not actually going to be able to make tangible results. You need 12, 18, 24 months. It works on trailing 12-month EBITDA. And, sure, if you've got a great investment banker, they can try and have that for forward, and you can do a whole lot of things here. But growing the multiple, right? So coming back to the start of the conversation we were having, where I said to you guys, what's stopping you from giving the same love and attention to 30 products as it is 3? It's the same thing as what's stopping you from launching 50 products a year and not 5. And so a lot of that comes down to process. And again, I'm just using my current day examples here, but like one of the things that we're looking to do in South Col is, you as the founder of the business, we're trying to remove you operationally to anything that's not going to grow that multiple as quickly as humanly possible. So we're going to sit you down. I'd say for anyone who can build the systems and processes and bring in the people to remove themselves operationally from things like PPC. These are all critical things. You need them to run the business, but they're not going to grow your multiple. PPC management, design work, copywriting, EBC, chasing up whatever, right? Seller support, the worst of it all.
The worst one.
These things are business critical, but they don't need to be used. So finding ways in which you can remove yourself operationally, and if you're really smart, you can actually reduce those operating expenses. So really enhancing that SDE. So if you can, like we've been talking a lot about VAs, if you can bring in low cost, high value talent, or if you can build a process where you systemize your business based on how we look at it, people, process, and technology, and you really sort of close that loop where you're no longer the critical person inside of it, then all of a sudden you could potentially build out, what do the next 20 products look like? What are the manufacturers I'm going to work with? What's the patents that I'm going to look to actually develop around it? You don't even necessarily have to bring this to market. You don't need to launch all of these products, because if you put yourself in the with a buyer's hat on, especially for prospective buyers, let's say that they're not a strategic or they're not a PE fund and they're not at that level where they have that level of foresight. You give them the roadmap of what the next 2 years of the products that they're going to need to launch, with the full blueprint of who you're speaking to, what the margins are, what the launch strategy is. All of a sudden, that is a lot more attractive to a significantly larger buyer pool. And what's more is, if you can actually document the process of what that looks like and how you iterate and build product, and you remove yourself, in terms of the value that you bring as much as humanly possible, then that's obviously going to have intrinsic value and increase that multiple. And on the other side, finding ways to reduce that operating cost and being very intelligent is going to have obviously some lasting things. So I'd say, in short, like to sort of summarize some of the points here, is if you can find intelligent ways to systemize and reduce the operating costs of your business, and then focus on the things that, let's call a spade here, the things that we all love, and that's inventing and creating and building product. If you can get yourself into that seat, that really, I'd be shocked if any founder listening in here didn't say, that's the thing that I hate doing, is coming up with new brand and product ideas. You're going to be able to go a whole lot further as well. So I know it was a long-winded answer, but we're also just scratching the surface, but that's what I got for you.
I love that stuff. I love that kind of, like, building the brand, launching products, doing product research, getting quotes, all that kind of is the fun part of it. But doing the books and getting the listing set up and inventory, like, I don't want to mess with that stuff. But I like the process of it when setting up the process. Sometimes I think you just need to take yourself out of the nitty gritty and just start writing down, okay, here's what I got to do. Get a sample, figure out the sample, negotiate costs. Like, writing it out is something I've done here in my own office, is just get like a big dry erase board and just write out the process so I can visually see it when I'm doing that, to make sure that I follow that exact little flow there. So I could go down a rabbit hole on this.
I was going to say, we could do a whole nother session on how you can build out your processes for your business that is going to serve you in the long term. But we ain't going to make it here today.
No, well,
give me another book. You said the Method of Hiring. What other good book do you got that you recommend?
I have tons.
Write it down.
So I'll give you a couple of my favorites. I'm trying to think that relates to people who are listening. So one of the books that I love is Traction, EOS. It's called EOS, Get a Grip on Your Business. And it's a business operating system, or the entrepreneurial operating system is what EOS stands for, that helps you get vision and traction in your business for teams between 5 and 250. And it's an absolute game changer. We've implemented it years ago, and I can't tell you sort of the value it adds. If you're managing people, I think a great one by Liz Wiseman called Multipliers, which is actually where we took the name MultiplyMii from. And it's all about how the best managers and leaders make those around them great. And, it's a deep dive into sort of a study that they did. Good to Great, Jim Collins, another absolute classic. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, I'll stop there. I'll
those are great. There. Well, I got more on my reading list. I love it. Yoni, we will have you back on. We'd love to talk about systems, processes. I mean, anything else. Obviously, you're a wealth of knowledge. We could go down a lot of rabbit holes, but we really appreciate you joining us today. It's been fantastic. I want to let everybody know you've talked about Escala and MultiplyMii. There's going to be people who have listened to this and are very interested in learning more, starting a conversation with you. How can they get in touch with you or find out more about your businesses?
Yeah. So the best way I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Yoni Kozminski at LinkedIn, or, you can see the websites cruising down the screen here. Literally Yoni at southcol.co or multiplymi.com or weareescala.com. You get me directly on any of them. That'd be best. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, clearly you've got your processes in place if you're managing all of that right now, all three of those. So yeah, everyone please check all those out. It's fascinating what you're doing, Yoni, and we will have you back on. So again, thanks for joining us, and thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back at this again tomorrow. Have a great one, everybody.
Another one.
Yeah.